Have you ever wanted to film yourself in the gym, but no matter what you do, you just can't figure it out? It looks flat, the angles are awkward, and it's nothing like the clean edits you see on TikTok or Instagram. Now, the good news is you don't need fancy equipment or someone to always be filming you. Now, I'm gonna show you exactly how to fix this, even if you're filming on your phone or just by yourself. I've been filming myself for about 2 to 3 years now, and these clips are the ones that's helped me go viral on TikTok over and over again, so I know exactly what works. In this video, I'm gonna be breaking down 4 things I always focus on when I'm filming myself. Number 1, the exact settings I use. Number 2, how I set up my shots when I'm filming alone. Number 3, the angles that actually work. And number 4, at the end of this video, I'm gonna be showing you exactly how I color grade my videos to give it that clean cinematic look that you always see in my videos. All right, so for number 1, the settings that I use. So for starters, the camera that I use is a Sony a7 IV, and the lens that I have paired with that in the gym is a 50mm. I love the 50mm because in my opinion, I think the 50mm is the most perfect compression for gym shots, and it just looks so good. And if you didn't know, 50mm is equivalent to what our eyes kind of see, and so we are basically walking with like 2 50mm lenses on our eyes. And if you have a camera, you should be able to follow my exact same settings, but if you have an iPhone, it's all good. I'll show you later exactly how you can get that cinematic, dark aesthetic look that everybody uses. So I shoot at 4K 24 frames per second. Shutter speed is at 1/50 because you always want to double your frame rate. I don't ever use slow motion, but if you do, make sure you're using 60 frames or 120 frames if your camera allows it. My camera can only go to, I think 60 frames at 4K if I'm not mistaken, but I never use slow motion, or if I do, like it's once in a blue moon. But if you do, make sure you're at 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. And then you also just want to double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, put the shutter speed at 1/120, and then so on with 120 frames per second to 1/240, or the closest it is that your camera lets you to go there. And then my f-stop is always, for the most part, at f1.4 so that you get that super blurry background. I feel like not a lot of people talk about this, is like setting your white balance when you are shooting in a gym setting. For the most part, I feel like a lot of people just set their white balance on auto, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but when they go and post online, they look super orange, I guess you could say, because I don't know, that's just what I've noticed. But I usually set my temperature at around 3000 to 4500, and this is just kind of preference. There's no right or wrong answer, and it kind of just depends on your gym setting as well. Just try to get as, I guess, white as you can, so just play around with your temperature. But again, I'm always at like 3500 for the most part, but I play around with it here and there depending on how warm the gym is and also how cold it is or whatever. And as a bonus, I always have my Black Pro Mist with me every time I'm in the gym filming. What this does is just makes the lighting in the background just look super glowy, and this has definitely gone a lot more popular in the past like 2 years. It's a little expensive, but I think it's worth it in my opinion. So if you can get one of these, this one is the Tiffen 77mm Black Pro Mist. This will be linked down in the description, so if you want to get one of these and use my link, I'd really appreciate it. As for my picture profile, I never ever use S-Log. On my a7 IV, I always use picture profile 11, and that lets me have enough control with coloring, and it works for me. If you want to use S-Log, you can, but for me, picture profile 11 is more than enough. So use whatever works for you, and you don't always have to, you know, listen to everybody saying you need to use S-Log.
Why you should be shooting in S-Log.
If you're shooting video on a Sony camera and you're not using the S-Log 3 profile, you're missing out, and here is why.
If you don't even want to use any picture profile because you're content with what the image looks straight out of your camera, then just do that. Just use whatever works for you. But with that, there's 2 base ISOs with picture profile 11, and that is at 125 and one at 500. And so I always try to stick to those 2 main base ISOs, and depending on which picture profile you're using on your camera, it might be different. So make sure that you're always on your base ISO so that you get the most crispiest look that your camera can let you, because if you're using a different ISO, it might look a little bit grainy. And I also always have this ND filter on me, and ND filters are basically just sunglasses but for your lens. What that does is, let's say I'm filming at 125 ISO at f1.4 and that's too dark, and I go to bump it up to 500 ISO. That's where the ND filter comes in, because I don't want to bump up my f-stop to, let's say, 2.8 or anything higher, because I always want to try to keep it at f1.4. That way the background is always blurry and it looks a lot more cinematic to me. And so that's where the ND filter comes in. You should get one of those. They're super cheap. They're like $20 to $35. I think it's probably one of the best investments you can get for your camera / lenses. Whereas the Black Pro Mist is a little bit more like an add-on, but I think you should totally get one of these. And then now, if you're just shooting on an iPhone, it's super simple, or your camera or other, Samsungs or whatever. So what you want to do is you just want to switch to 4K, 30 frames per second, and all you have to do is just bump down your ISO meter to around -1 to -2, and it makes the biggest difference. Your footage just looks a lot more aesthetic, there's more depth. It looks a lot more professional / cinematic than if you were to just go to record and just click. It looks so flat when you don't bump it down, in my opinion at least. So that's what I do. I think it looks amazing, way more better than your normal just iPhone footage. Number 2, how I set up my shots. 95% of the time I'm filming alone, so I obviously need a tripod. Now, every creator has their own style of filming. Some like level shots, some like low shots, some like high angle shots, some like overhead shots, and some like movement shots. What I would say though is try to be creative and try to use as many different shots as you can. For me, 90% of the shots that I take are low angled shots, because that way when the camera is low and it's looking up at you, you're more dominant and you're more assertive, if that makes sense, and you're in a gym setting. And so to me, that just makes more sense. It's also a lot more convenient when you're not having to move around your tripod legs and it's just kind of stationary. Does that make sense? So if you're doing one machine and you have it at a low angle and you're not having to move around your tripod, it's a lot easier and it's a lot faster than having to move your tripod around and trying to adjust the level here and there. So it just makes it a lot faster. And even though I'm shooting with a 50mm, some might not like that 50mm because it's a little bit tighter and they're gonna have to go a lot further than if they were shooting with like a 24mm, let's say. I always try to make sure that I get my entire body when I'm framing myself, as well as the machine. So that way, if I wanted to add any effects on After Effects, I can do that easily. Not only that, but I'm also shooting at 4K. So if I ever wanted to zoom in and try to get more of like a closer up shot or whatever, I can also do that and it will still look decent because it's in 4K. Now for focusing, I use that one little small focusing square on my Sony a7 IV. It might be different for you, or maybe you might have more options or less options, but try to look at what the smallest one is. So that way, before you go to do your one set and you want to film, you want to tap on where you're gonna be. It doesn't have to be exactly on your face. Usually if I'm, let's say, doing a incline dumbbell bench press, I'll usually just tap on the bench. So that way, if there was any movement in the background, my camera won't automatically pick up their faces. And so that way I'm not out of focus when I'm benching or doing my setup, and it's just focused on one position. Number 3, the angles that actually work in the gym. I feel like in the film industry, there are so many rules about how to film and what you should be doing, and just all the rules there are. But in my opinion, I think in a gym setting, you can really just try to be as creative as possible. There aren't really that many rules that you can try to follow, if that makes sense. I guess my advice is to just try to be as creative as possible when you're filming, because filming in the gym is basically just a trial and error. Try one thing, if you don't like it, stop that. If you try one thing and you like that, it might be revolutionary, it might be something that nobody's ever done. All right, so the first angle I want to talk about is a low angle shot. This is the main one I use because, like I said, it's low, you're not asking for too much attention, you're quicker when you're working out, you don't have to move the legs around up and down. But anyways, what you have to do is set your tripod to the lowest it can go, tilt the camera a little bit so that way it's looking up at you, and you just want to make sure that every time you're filming all of these angles, make sure it's leveled. For most cameras now, there's usually like a leveler to always make sure that you're leveled, obviously, and your footage is gonna look great. Now, the bad thing about the next 3 shots I'm gonna talk about is that you have to put the camera up a bit, meaning you're gonna have to put your tripod a lot higher than your normal low angle shots. I feel like when I use these next 3 shots, I don't know, I just feel like I'm asking for attention. I feel like more people are looking at me even though they're not, but I know they are. It's a mind game. But anyways, the next one is called an eye level shot. This is basically an eye level shot, you and me right now. It's leveled. This one's pretty basic, you know, you just have to make sure that your eye level, it's nothing crazy, it's nothing special. This is the most basic one in my opinion. The third angle I want to talk about is a high angle or a overhead shot. Now, these 2 shots are crazy and they're a lot higher than the first 2 shots I mentioned. The high angle shots is basically the camera looking down to you. So I guess this is kind of like great for showing squat form. If you want to see how your deadlift is, I'm not sure. Like I said, try to be creative with these shots. You can get a shot of you maybe on a bench looking at your phone and you know, you're using a high angle shot looking at you. Just try to be as creative as possible. Fourth one I want to talk about is a mirror shot. This one's the same thing of how we've been filming, but this time you're not pointing the camera directly to you. You're using the mirror to kind of get you, if that makes sense. But this gives it like a different perspective. It's kind of the same, but it's a little bit different. The fifth one I want to talk about is a foreground shot. This one is probably like one of the most creative ways that you can go about this. You can use like dumbbells or squat racks or anything that you can make blurry, and you can also use it like as a leading line. So for example, this one dumbbell shot, all the dumbbells are blurry and then I'm at the end and I am doing a curl and it looks super aesthetic, it looks cinematic in my opinion. Now the sixth shot I want to talk to you about is a handheld movement. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You are going to need a friend with you. Sometimes I like using movement shots. It's a different movement than if you were to just zoom in post, and it's pretty simple. Basically just tell your friend to follow you around everywhere you go and just kind of film you if you're going up and down with your deadlifts, if you're walking. Handheld shots are just another great type of shot that you can use. The next one I want to talk about is a symmetry shot. If your gym has a lot of lighting, you can try to use that to make you super symmetry. Same with machines, same with treadmills or anything like that. Try your best to be creative in there. Every time I walk into a new gym, I'm always looking for symmetry shots to see if I can get one of those shots, because every time I get that, it's super aesthetic. I don't always get it because every gym isn't aesthetic like that, if that makes sense. Every time you go into a gym, try to see what you can film that's symmetrical. But yeah, symmetry shots are great. The next one I want to talk to you about is close-up shots. This one's a little bit more personal, I guess. You can get a lot closer to your face, you know, do more details like sweating, something like that. You maybe untying your shoes, maybe you gripping a bar with straps or something like that. Super close shots is a great add-on when you're doing these kind of different shots. And the very last one that we're going to be talking about is how I color grade my videos. I only use Premiere Pro, so if you're using DaVinci or any other software for editing, I unfortunately can't help you because I only try to teach things that I use myself. We are going to be going to Premiere Pro, like I said, under the color panel. So we are going to be doing 2 videos here. So the first one that we're going to be doing is this one here. You already saw this, but this is no color grade right here. ISO meter was about at 0, I think, when I filmed this. So I like the dark aesthetic already. Just for color grading, by the way, color grading is super subjective and there isn't really like a right or wrong answer. Color grading in a sense is just like changing how the video looks until you like what you see on the screen, basically. What I'm gonna do right now is kind of put the exposure up a little bit, maybe just so. Contrast, I always like my videos to be a little bit more contrasty. For highlights, I typically like to kind of bring it down a bit. And then shadows, I'll usually bring it up just so we can kind of bring up some of the things that's hidden here in the dumbbell areas. And whites, for example, maybe I'll bring it up a bit. And that's really what I only do for basic correction. Then what I'll do is I'll go to HSL secondary. I just found out about this year. So before, what I would do is I would go to curves and I'd play around with all of these lines, which I didn't even really understand, to be honest with you. And if I would move the blue, my skin would also change. And I really didn't know how to change everything else aside from my skin, because the last thing you want to be is like super orange, basically, or super blue. So what I like to do is just like fix my basic correction. And once I like that, I'll just go to HSL secondary to just try to change the color of everything else aside from my skin. Go to HSL secondary. I'm gonna grab this drop tool over here and then click on that, and then I'll go over to my face and click, right? So now it knows what I am trying to avoid. Put up the denoise and the blur up a bit, and then I will click on this invert toggle right here. So now if I bump up the denoise, you'll see that what I've clicked on earlier is now highlighted here as the gray area. But notice how not all of my face has been colored gray yet. So what I'll do is I'll grab this button, I'll click on this, and then click on my nose that hasn't been added on, if that makes sense. So now my whole face and my hands are all added in. And sometimes it'll also pick up things that is not your face, because your face will maybe be the same color as the background as well. Anything we do on this video, the colors will be applied to it aside from our face. What I usually do is bring it down here to the blue area. And so it kind of gives it that like coldish type of cinematic color grading. That's usually what I like. If you wanted to make it orange, you could. If you wanted to make it green, you could. If you wanted to make it pink, you know, you could really play around with this color wheel to whatever it is that you like. But notice how for the most part, the color of my skin doesn't really change, right? It's just, it stays like that no matter what I do to my image. You see what I'm saying there? Right? It just stays to one color. But I'll just kind of go down here. For the most part, I'm content with that. I'll just leave it at that, and that's a clip right there. Okay, for the second video, this is a more blown out video. I think I exposed this to 1 when I was filming this. And so what I'll do is I'll start off with the contrast. I'll bump that up a bit. Highlights, I'll bring it down because I said it's a little bit blown out. Like I said, shadows, I'll probably turn down as well. And notice how that's already looking super good. Exposure, I might, you know, go down a little bit by only 0.2. And then whites, I think, I don't know, I'm content with that. Like maybe around to negative 3.7. And then I'll go down to HSL secondary again, click on my skin tones right there. I'll put up the denoise a bit and then click on the invert. So I'll do that again. And notice how it's only picked up on my legs because that's what I clicked on. So then what I'll do is click on the eyedropper tool with a positive icon and then click on my arm as well. See if that's enough. So that added my arm, but then we're gonna have to go here again because this hasn't been added. So I'm gonna keep doing that until all of my skin has been added. So I'm gonna go here, add here as well, and I'm gonna keep doing that until my entire skin has been added. There you go. I'll also go here because this hasn't been added as well. Okay, here as well. So for the most part, I think my skin's been covered like so. It also chose a bunch of the turf section over here and as well as here. But anyways, we'll see what it looks like once we change the background color. Okay, and then I'm just gonna move this down to change the background to, you know, that teal-ish type of cinematic color. Just like that. I think I'm happy with that. So that's the first color grading that we did. And then this is the second one that I did. I don't really like how blue it is actually, so I think I'm gonna just tone it down a little bit. Maybe go towards the green. Maybe go back here a little bit. That's it. And so if you click on the Lumetri color here and just click on the FX to toggle it off. See, that's before, this is after. Let's go here as well. This is before, this is after. So that's just kind of what I do when I color grade my videos. But yeah, that's it for this video. I really hope that you got something from this, and I hope that you apply some of the tips that I gave you for the next time that you are gonna be filming in a gym setting. But if you haven't started yet with your, you know, social media journey, this is your sign to start now. Because I know you've been putting it to the side and I know you have all these fears going on in your head. So I encourage you to just start now because your life could change for the better, but you'll never know unless you start. So start now, okay? I'll see you on the next one.